Good evening, Chaps Fantasy Chat. Thursday nights, just before NFL football. That's right, guys. Isn't it great? This time of year is so awesome because there's so much going on in the sports world. And, I just want to start off telling you, do you ever have one of those nights where you sit down and you have a nice cocktail and maybe you hadn't eaten, you ate an early lunch, you didn't eat a real heavy lunch, and all of a sudden that just kicks you. That happened to me right before the show. Ha! So, no big deal. I'm not a rookie. This isn't my first rodeo. I went in, I got a few pretzels, some peanuts, popped them in my mouth. I'm good to go, guys. And besides, this is supposed to be fun. Right? This is supposed to be something that is an enjoyable part of your life. It's something that, takes the stress off of work, takes the stress off of, other things. So let's have some fun tonight. This is meant to be interactive. Tonight, we're going to talk about matchups. And we're going to break down the games. We're going to talk about all the games, but I'm really wanting to break this down from a fantasy perspective. Here's the issue. You guys that know me, that listen to me all the time, know that I'm a stats guy. I like having numbers on paper so that we can analyze and create mismatches on our opponents fantasy-wise, right? Well, we've only played 1 week of football. So it makes it a little bit tougher to analyze from that perspective with such a small sample size. But have no fear. Doesn't mean we're not going to have some fun. We're going to break these games down. And we're going to figure out some of these opportunities for you in both daily as well as your weekly leagues. Okay? So this hour is brought to you by Rowan's Creek Whiskey and a little bit of Southern Style Sweet Tea. Ed, what's up? Good to see you. I hope you enjoy the show. So, I think it's fun to incorporate, the things we enjoy doing because, this is really, I can remember being from a young kid watching these games with my dad, and it's really just kind of ingrained in how I think and what I do. So, let's just talk holistically about these games, and when real good matchups come up, we'll identify them so that whether you're playing in a yearly league or whether you're planning on playing daily fantasy, you can identify these places where you can take advantage, okay? So, without further ado, let's start tonight. There's a game on tonight. I set this show up on Thursday evenings for a reason. I want to talk about the Buccaneers and the Panthers, right? This is a game that these teams are familiar with each other. So, as I go through these, if you guys have questions about these teams, please shoot them out because this is designed to be interactive, right? I want us all to have fun. It's beneficial for everyone. I want us all to win. Patrick, congratulations, 1-0. Celebrate it. Yes, absolutely. So let's talk about tonight, first off. So, again, Tampa at Carolina. The Panthers are getting 7 points, and the over-under is 50.5. The Bucs lost last week, come in 0-1 on the road on a short week to play Carolina. Carolina is 5-1 in the last 6 games against the Buccaneers. So, already, we're starting to see a trend. 1, it's the home team. 2, they've got a good track record. Let's talk about the players. Cam Newton, career is 9-4 versus Tampa Bay. 20 touchdowns to 13 interceptions. But he doesn't do so well on Thursday nights. He's 3-5, 7 touchdowns and 9 interceptions on Thursday evenings. So what that tells me is Carolina's going to rely heavily on Mr. McCaffrey tonight. I think that this game certainly is an interesting one. These teams are familiar. I'm not one of the, it's funny. I listen all day to these prognosticators and all these shows, and everybody seems to be holistically on Carolina. I'm not totally sold on the fact that Tampa Bay is not going to be a good team. Okay? I think Tampa Bay has some things to offer. I think Arians is a good coach, and he will turn some things around. That said, Jameis Winston has his flaws. This is a vital year for Winston. And he has, really, guys, if we think about it, as much talent to work with as he ever has. Chris Godwin, my play of the evening, everybody knows about McCaffrey. Everybody knows that, he played 100% of Carolina's snaps last week. He's was the lead receiver and the lead rusher. Christian McCaffrey, in all honesty, is the number one player in fantasy football. Let's be totally honest about that, right? Last week, 129 rush, 81 pass, 2 touchdowns. He caught 10 of his 11 balls thrown to him. Last season, just for perspective, McCaffrey caught 107 balls. The next closest teammate was DJ Moore at 55. So he almost doubled his next closest target mate, rather. So it just puts in perspective how big of a piece of the offense McCaffrey is for them. Now, all that said, there's other things there, okay? And that's where we really want to get into and understand, okay, yeah, you didn't have the first, second, or third overall pick. You didn't get McCaffrey. There's still meat on the bone in Carolina. Let's talk about some guys that you would have had to draft. Let's talk about DJ Moore. DJ Moore is really, he's kind of a boomer bust player, but he's one of those guys that you would have to trust at home because Cam plays so much better at home. So it's interesting because that's kind of how I look at these marginal quarterbacks. I know Cam's better than a marginal quarterback. I understand that aspect of it. Okay? But these quarterbacks that aren't in your elite category, I kind of look at it as home-away splits. When they're at home, I tend to give them a boost. When they're away, I tend to shy away from them if I can. I mean, you could do that at the quarterback position because it's so deep, right? So that's why I'm saying DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, I like what they bring to the table tonight. I like the fact that Tampa Bay has not been a good pass defense. So if you're in a fantasy league and you have one of these two guys, you can play these guys this week, okay? The one thing to also keep in mind, this guy's a big part of the offense. Greg Olsen looks like he's going to be a scratch tonight. Sorry if I don't know that final-wise. If anybody knows that, let me know. I get caught in my studying right before the show. I don't think to put the damn news on and see what's going on real time, right? So, food for thought. If Greg Olsen is a scratch, look for increased production from Ian Thomas. He only got one target last week, but if Olsen doesn't play, the tight end position is such a large part of that offense. Look for him to be involved early and often. He almost becomes a tight end one. If you're playing daily, if Olsen's out, he's certainly someone that is a sneaky tight end play. Okay, I don't always like to do that on Thursday night because, if it doesn't work out, pissed off at yourself for the whole weekend because, you got a big fat goose egg or a couple points. It doesn't really, you got a longer period of time to sit on it and stew. Okay. But it's risky. Thomas could pay big dividends tonight. From Tampa Bay's perspective, I think it's really interesting. And this is an interesting game. I'm not one that subscribes to the, Tampa's going to get blown out. I do think Carolina will win handedly because they have the better run game. But fact of the matter is, if you look at Tampa Bay and what Bruce Arians and Byron Leftwich bring to the table, I think that, yes, last week wasn't great for Jameis. He struggled. But when you look at the amount of talent around him, and you have to understand, Bruce Arians isn't calling the plays. That's not necessarily a bad thing. He's mentoring Byron Leftwich on calling the plays. So it is a work in progress. That said, really, everybody knows how talented Mike Evans is. Chris Godwin is just as talented. And just as dangerous. And he's just as dangerous because he's a red zone target, whereas Evans is more of a deep threat target. So they complement each other very well. Chris Godwin, so let me put it this way. From a FanDuel or DraftKings perspective, you're probably not going to spend up on Christian McCaffrey. I wouldn't blame you if you did, but the real benefactor in this game tonight, to me, is Chris Godwin. Because he's reasonable. You can get him at a good rate. And he's going to be consistent. The likelihood that he's going to score a touchdown tonight is pretty high. Because Winston trusts him in the red zone. Now, there's a chance he might get shut out. But I don't think that's the case. I think that Jameis is talented enough to put some points on the board to threaten Carolina. They're familiar enough to know, right? So, that said, Godwin is my player of the night, okay? Some other guys that, you might want to think about, I'll give you a couple. Again, we talked about Samuels, we talked about Moore. One other guy I really want to talk about before we move on into Sunday slate is Cameron Brate. Cameron Brate had 2 touchdowns called back last week. Winston's comfortable with Cam Brate. O.J. Howard's being used more as a blocking back. So it's interesting to see how that dynamic works. I'm feeling good. I just had to get me another sip. So Cam Brate's someone that I'm really interested in going forward as a sneaky play. Just a little food for thought. Early on in the year, you can really take advantage of educated guesses. This is one of my educated guesses. I really think that when it all comes down to it, the Buccaneers are going to be really comfortable running 2 tight end sets, and Jameis Winston is really comfortable with Cameron Brate. They've had a rapport for a long time now. I look for a big year out of Brate. So, what do you guys think? I'll give you my prediction tonight. I'm going to go 20. Let's go 24-21. Carolina. I think that McCaffrey has 2 touchdowns. I think that DJ Moore scores. Tampa Bay side, I think that Godwin scores, Brate scores. And I think Ronald Jones gets to the end zone tonight. Ronald Jones, guys, is another guy that is trending upwards. And I say that because when you look at the run breakdown, the touches from last week, it's really, that's... So, again, I kind of touched on it earlier. I'm really big into numbers when we come down to these shows, right? I don't have a whole lot of numbers this week, so I'm kind of speaking on feel. Hey, Lenny, how you doing? I'm speaking on feel this week, but as we get these numbers, I kind of want to break down like where we could take advantage of statistics because that's really important, okay? But for instance, when you look at Tampa Bay's touches last week from the running backs, it's telling, okay? So let's talk about that real quick. Everybody kind of went in with the perception that Peyton Barber was the lead back in Tampa Bay. Well, if you look at last week's stats, it'll tell you something else. Because Barber had 8 carries and Ronald Jones had 13. And just to one up that, if you're looking at red zone carries, Barber only had 1 red zone carry and Jones had 3. So just keep that in mind. Ronald Jones is one of those guys who might be out there on your waiver wire. Believe it or not, if you're in a 10-team league, he probably is. He's someone you might want to pick up right now before this game starts. Because it's looking like he's going to be, albeit in not a good situation, the lead back of the Tampa Bay offense. And I think that speaks to something, right? So, just first point to take, watch Ronald Jones. If you don't want to fight the waiver wire crap, go pick him up right now. He's looking like the lead back in Tampa, okay? Let's move on to Sunday's matches. And what I'm planning on doing is I'll get as far as I can. I'm not trying to get through all of these. But if we get that far, we will. Oh, God. Lenny. So, we'll talk about that. And I'm not saying I disagree with you, Lenny. First off, let me take a quick second. Let me, for those of you that are just listening, okay, please go and sign in. LennyMelnickFantasySports.com. We have an interactive chat room. It's really pretty awesome. All my friends are there. So, I just want to say hi and thank you, Andrea. Thank you for coming. Lenny, Vic. Who else we got here? Patrick, Ed, everybody. It's great to have y'all. I want y'all to ask your questions. And I'll get to them. If I don't answer them, it's just because I didn't see them. Ask them again, okay? So I see this right now. Sterling Shepard or Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell every time. But it's a game time decision, so you have to really... So I'll say this first, Andrea. The MRI came back clean. There's no structural damage on his shoulder. Right? So that's a good sign. That doesn't necessarily mean that he plays. I think Sterling Shepard's in trouble for different reasons, okay? And we'll get to that in a little bit. If I don't get to it, remind me when we get to the Giants. But let's talk about Sunday's matchups. We're going to talk about them one-on-one, okay? And we'll get to as many of them as we can. There are 4 or 5 of them here that I want. So we want to target certain players, right? So holistically, we're coming from a DFS perspective here, but I certainly want to talk about year-long leagues. I want to talk about sit starts. I want to talk about stuff like that because it is important as we go down through these games to understand matchups, to understand trends, to understand, injuries and all those things. So, as I go through these, ask. So the first game I want to talk about, and I find this game really interesting as a Steeler fan, is the Niners and the Bengals. Last week, the Bengals didn't look half bad. They didn't come out on the good side of it. But they fought the Seahawks hard. And boy, it's funny. I'm a big subscriber to coaching staff is really important, right? And I was never a big Marvin Jones fan. I really think this Taylor guy is going to turn them around. You look at what happened with the Bengals offense last week. it really showed signs of life. And I think it's important when you're looking at these guys and you have this perception of what you've had in the past of a Tyler Boyd or of a John Ross or of a Uzoma or of a Eifert. You can't. You're turning a new page over. So all these guys are starting with a fresh slate. So when you think about it, and you think about the fact that Andy Dalton threw for 418 yards last week, it's significant. It's significant because these guys all of a sudden playing for an inept play caller are viable, right? And they you can't let history get in the way of. Now, they might still turn out to be garbage. They might very well happen. But think about where Jared Goff was when Sean McVay took the head coaching job with the Rams. And think about where he is now. And understand that the person with his hands on Jared Goff the most was Zach Taylor. Okay? So, the new head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals turned Jared Goff from a surefire flop in the NFL to a borderline QB1 fantasy-wise. Basically overnight. Why can't you do the same for Andy Dalton? That's my perspective on it, okay? So, actually, in my home league, I picked up Andy Dalton. Why not? Why not? If you're going to throw the ball 55 times, you're probably going to have pretty good numbers. He had the most passing yards of anyone in the NFL last week, okay? 2 TDs, 0 INTs. Yes, he fumbled twice. Yes, he was sacked 5 times. That's okay. If he keeps perspective, Andy Dalton's 418 passing yards were the 5th most in Bengals franchise history. Okay? Please, Andrea, please don't do that. Keep Devontae Freeman. Kenyon, you don't want anything to do with Kenyon Drake. Okay? Just don't do that, okay? So, how about San Francisco? What are our thoughts on San Francisco? I'm really not sure what to take of them. I'm not a big fan of Raheem Mostert. Anytime. You got my number, Andrea. You can call me if you got a question. I will set you straight. Because I know you set me straight in baseball all the time, right? So, teammates work like that. So, anyway, San Fran, they're really kind of in a predicament. Aside from George Kittle, really, there's not much there. Okay? It's concerning. Tevin Coleman is going to be out for a while. You're right, Tony. You're right. He did get a lot of goal line carries. And thanks for coming. I appreciate having you. I still think Devontae Freeman poses an amount of talent that we have not yet seen. They've added, you guys are getting me ahead of myself, but that's okay. They've added 2 offensive linemen in the first round last year with plenty of talent. They just ran into a buzzsaw with the Minnesota Vikings last week. That's going to happen with them. Okay? It's okay. Again, let's not overreact, right? I think there's plenty of good games from Devonta Freeman. But back to San Francisco, and I want to get away from San Francisco. Trust me, there's not a whole lot to like there early on. I think Jimmy G's struggling. He's struggling with finding his identity in that offense. And and he's struggling with not having a whole lot of talent around him. Aside from George Kittle, who I think is going to quickly get focused upon by opposing defenses, maybe as soon as this week, it's going to cause a lot of problems for Garoppolo, and it might be a long year. I do like Kittle. They have to add. Deebo Samuels has to step up. Marquise Goodwin has to step up. Dante Pettis has to step up. And I'm not sure they're there yet. The one I'm interested in is Deebo Samuel, though, because I think he's an elite pedigree that might be able to help them. Okay? So that's the one guy I'm kind of, as a flyer, right? I'm keeping my eye on. He's on my target. He's on the board, right? He's not at the bullseye, but he's on the board. So just someone to think about. All in all, I think the Bengals win this, so this is a pick'em game. This is a pick'em game, and 45 over under. I'm staying away from this aspect of that, but fact of the matter is I think the Bengals win this. I think that you continue to see that that Zach Taylor is an established and efficient NFL head coach. So I look forward to seeing, another competitive foe in the AFC North this year. So let's move on. Real quick though, as far as DFS targets, you might want to lay off this game. I don't trust John Brown this week. Gio Bernard is someone who I'm really interested in, especially if Mixon doesn't play. He's been quite successful when Mixon hasn't played. So and he's serviceable even when he does. So Gio Bernard is someone who I'm looking at from this game. That'd be about it. Okay, there's a lot of other good matchups here that we can focus on. Let's next talk about. Speaking of good targets, let's talk about the Chargers and let's talk about the Lions. This line, the Chargers are giving 2.5, and it's a 47 over under. Believe it or not, the Chargers do well on the road. They're 7-1 in their last 8 road games. They are dinged up for this game. But that said, I still think that they have the talent to hang with the Lions. Holistically speaking, I like the Chargers in this game. I like them covering the 2.5. I think that this game you'll see some different things out of the Chargers. They're banged up, right? The Hunter Henry news, he'll be out for quite a while now. Of course the Melvin Gordon holdout, and I look for big things out of Keenan Allen. I look for big things out of Travis Benjamin. If you're looking for a sleeper on Sunday, I think Travis Benjamin is someone that you can put in there with or without Mike Williams, because the Lions struggle with slot receivers. You can play Travis Benjamin and get a cheap price out of him and get a high probability of production out of it. Okay? Now, I do like the over in this game because I got to be honest with you guys. I like the Lions' offense. I like it for a number of reasons, though. Okay, so let's talk about that. And I'm not saying that the Lions are going to break out. I'm not saying it's going to be this big resurgence here. But what I do want to say, I want to really emphasize this. And hell, this could change tomorrow or Sunday, right? Matt Stafford's healthy. Matt Stafford's healthy, and he's got himself a hell of a surrounding arsenal. That hasn't been the case the last couple years, okay? Let's talk about, yes, they're going to run Carry-On and Anderson. That's going to be a big part of their offense. I understand. No, you're absolutely right, Tony. He's not established. But he's got a reputation. Taylor. He's talking about Taylor, I assume. He's got a reputation. And when you got a reputation like that, a lot of times that builds momentum. And when momentum builds, people have confidence. When people get confidence, all of a sudden you see the real abilities. That's what I'm seeing in Cincinnati early on. Again, it could change tomorrow. Let's talk about Stafford, though. I think having carry on, having a strong run game is beneficial to Stafford because it makes defenses have to be honest with him. You can't play nickel defenses on them all the time. They have to play, 4-3s or 3-4s. So having carry on and having Anderson is going to be beneficial for them. But let's not forget, okay, at 32 years old, Matt Stafford's resume, okay? He threw for 5,000 yards in 2011 as a 23-year-old. 6 times he's thrown for 4,000 yards. And he's got a career 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. Now, yes, he's been on some shitty teams the last couple years. Granted. My only point of all this, I don't think this is one of them. So you look at his numbers from when he had good teams. I think you could kind of replicate that. So if you're in a 10-team league, maybe you had, one of these guys that got hurt last week. Maybe Stafford's on the wire. Here's another thing. Stafford could surpass 40,000 career yards this year. He currently sits at 38,911. So let's talk about why there's this sudden resurgence, of offense in Detroit. And I'll cut right to the chase. This comes down to 2 players, in my opinion. The first one is Danny Amendola. Danny Amendola is just what that offense needs. He was dinged up last year. He's not this year. With Golladay and Jones, you can run those guys deep. Amendola is... Let me step back. Patricia wants to mimic Belichick. Okay? Detroit's Amendola is equal to New England's Edelman. Amendola could catch 100 balls this year. He could get 1,000 yards this year as a 34-year-old. Okay? He's the first focal point in this offense that I want to talk about. I think it's really important to understand he's out there in a lot of waivers. I picked him up in multiple leagues. The second one's a no-brainer. Hawkinson. This guy is fantasy gold. Okay? Last week he was second on the team in targets behind Golladay. 5 targets. He ended up with 131 yards and a touchdown. He had 25 fantasy points. So for perspective, 25 fantasy points puts TJ Hawkinson at the 16th best performance out of the tight end position of the entire 2018 year. And I don't think that's close to his ceiling. If TJ Hawkinson is out there in any of your leagues, he must be owned. This guy might be the 3rd best tight end in the league when it's all said and done. He has that kind of ability. He's an elite tight end waiting for you to grab him. Okay? I love Hawkinson. I highly recommend grabbing him. So my take on the Detroit game, excuse me, I'm trying to go back and forth between 2 pages. That's why it might sound a little bit awkward. So, the Chargers in Detroit, 2.5. I like the Chargers. I like the over. I think Detroit's offense is much improved. The Chargers, even though they're dinged up, I think that they'll score some points with Benjamin. They'll score some points with Keenan Allen. Moving on, as they say. How about Minnesota and Green Bay? This is a game I'm targeting this week. I think it's really important to understand intent. I think it's really important to understand that when somebody or something is determined to do something, they're going to do it. I think Minnesota is determined to run the ball this year. And they're capable of running the ball this year. Before I get into my Dalvin Cook love, I have to emphasize to you, they have to throw the ball to the talented wide receivers that they had. Okay? Diggs and Thielen have to be more involved. But I think it's clear the effect of the one-cut offense in Minnesota. It's clear how comfortable Dalvin Cook is under Gary Kubiak's scheme. Okay? Last week, Cook and Madison, rushed the ball 30 times for 160 yards. I look for this trend to continue. I look for Minnesota to try and operate a lot like Baltimore did last year, where they just become so good at running the ball that it becomes an issue for teams. Okay? I love Alexander Madison. I think he's viable even if Cook stays healthy all year. Okay? So games of interest. I've got 5 games of interest. This is my one game of interest, my number one. The reason why this is interesting to me is everybody coming off of a Thursday night defensive slugfest with the Bears. Everybody's under the assumption that Green Bay's defense is stout. I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying Minnesota's run offense is going to punch them in the mouth this weekend. And Dalvin Cook is going to dominate the Green Bay defensive line. That's my feel. Again, there's no statistics that back that up other than watching last week's game. Last year, he was dominated versus Green Bay. Okay, I think he had 67 total yards in 2 matches. I look for him to have that in the first half this week. I think Alexander Madison could have a big game this week. But you got to get the receivers involved, okay? From Green Bay's perspective, their defense is really going to have to step up to the challenge that Minnesota will provide them. Aaron Rodgers needs all of his supplementary pieces to function well this week. Devontae Adams needs to play, but also you need Jimmy Graham, you need Marquez Valdes-Scantling, you need all of the receivers and running back. Aaron Jones needs to play, okay? I don't know if they're up to that yet. I like, obviously, the Vikings in this game. I love the 2.5 points that the Vikings are getting. Let's talk about the Colts and the the Titans. Yeah. The Titans are 3.5-point dogs. This is a 44-point over-under. Indianapolis, 13-2 in their last 15 games against the Titans. I'll say that again. Indianapolis is 13-2 in their last 15 games against Tennessee. They're 6-1 when going to Tennessee. This is important. Indianapolis is getting points. Do you see what I'm saying? They're a good bet. The Colts last week had 13 rushing first downs. That's more than any other team in the NFL. Again, I'll slow down so you hear that. The Colts had more rushing first downs than Minnesota and Baltimore last week. They both had 10, tied for second. They had the second most rushing yards last week. 6.2 yards a rush. Good for fourth in the league. Marlon Mack is about to step into elite territory if this continues. And I look forward to. I like what the Colts are doing. I think that they might be the best team in that division. I'll say it again. I think the Colts might be the best team in that division. They're going to play on defense. They're going to run the football. And Brissett's not going to hurt them. They're going to be a fundamentally sound team. I like the Colts this weekend. I like Marlon Mack. I like T.Y. Hilton. I like Jack Doyle. For the Titans, I like Corey Davis this week. He's too talented not to be a bigger part of that offense. I think the Colts win. And I think they have a good year. Let's talk about the Pats and let's talk about the Dolphins. And you know what, guys? I hope y'all recognize this. I'm not even going to flood your ear with the Brown shit. I don't subscribe to that stuff. I'm more about it for the football, so I hope you guys appreciate that. What I will say, the spread on this game is obscene. I have 15 here. I think it's up to 18 now. Guys, I think Miami's 6-1 in their last 7 games in Miami against the Patriots. This is easy money. This is a conference or division game. These guys play each other twice a year. Now, the downside of that is it could be like a college game where it's 55-3, right? But I think the Dolphins hold it closer than that. I think Antonio Brown's bullshit starts to surface this week on the sideline with someone on that offensive staff. Listen to where you heard it first. Antonio Brown's going to fucking blow up this week on the sideline. It's going to distract the Patriots. Here's my favorite game. The Seahawks and the Steelers. This is going to be a heck of a game, guys. It concerns me a little bit that this line is moving in the Steelers' direction. It's up to 4.5 now. The over-under is 46.5. I think it's important to take note that Seattle's 1-0. The Steelers are 0-1. Seattle should be the favorite here. I know it's in Pittsburgh. I'm a damn Steelers fan, and I'm saying that. I think the Steelers win, though, that said. You're going to see a big game out of Big Ben. You're going to start to see Vance McDonald taking over as one of the go-to weapons on this offense. I think Juju's still a little banged up, but I think you see big things out of James Washington. I think you see big things out of Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson's a name to put on your radar, guys. Maybe not next week. Maybe not in a couple weeks. Deontay Johnson. Whoever asked about Moncrief is awful. Moncrief's days are numbered. Deontay Johnson is the one to know in Pittsburgh. They spitefully drafted him with the Antonio Brown pick. Okay? The 3rd round pick that they got from the Raiders. It was almost like a, ha-ha, here, watch what we're going to do with this kid. I love Deontay Johnson. Okay? Chris Carson's going to have a big influence in this game. DK Metcalf is legitimate. As far as DFS plays go, I think Chris Carson's almost an automatic every week from here on out. He's such a big part of the offense. He got 84% of the offensive snaps last week. He had 79% of the offensive touches from the backfield perspective last week. That will continue. I think Penny works his way in a bit, but I really do believe that Chris Carson's a bell cow in Seattle, and he will get his fantasy numbers more weeks than not, including this one. That said, I've said this in the preseason. I'll continue. I'm not ready to back down on it yet. The Steelers' run defense is stout. It will be hard work for Seattle's running game this week. They are young. There's going to be some growing pains. But Devin Bush is an influence in the middle in that defense. From Pittsburgh's perspective offensively, I think James Conner rights the ship this week. The Steelers start to run the football effectively. You'll see some Jalen Samuels running the ball. But again, in all honesty, you're going to see Vance McDonald, James Washington have big parts of this offense this week. If you're playing DFS, those are 2 guys you can get cheap, and it allows you to build with talent from there on out. Okay? So if you get a James Washington or a Deontay Johnson, you could get a guy like Saquon Barkley or CMC because those guys are so cheap, okay? And they might get you the production. So let's move on because there's a lot of games, and I'm going to go up to 8:20 because the wife's not home and there's a lot of games. I'm not saying I'm going to get through all these games. Andrea, I mean, depending on the size of your league, you need to hold on to Penny, though, because, if Carson goes down, Rashad Penny's the new Chris Carson. He's going to be a big part of that offense, and he's doing just enough to be serviceable. Yes, he had a bad week last week, but he's capable. So if you can hold on to him, I'm not sure your league size, I'm not sure what's available, but be patient. It's funny, I fight this every year myself. Going from baseball to football is really hard for me because you guys have listened, the people that are in the chat room right now, you listen to me all the time, they know how I'm a hyperactive owner, right? I'm working the waiver wire literally every day, not every week. So it's hard going from that in baseball to a football league where you kind of have to be like, all right, I want to do this, but I can't, because of these guys. Rashad Penny has tremendous potential because Seattle's such a run-heavy team. Penny's going to give you some stats every week, but if Carson goes down, he has the potential to get you 1,000 yards. If Carson goes down this week, Penny could get 1,500 yards, Andrea. That's my point, okay? And if you let Penny go, someone else is going to pick him up. It's It's quite different from baseball. You have to get into a different mindset than football, right? You have to understand potential along with opportunity. Make sense? I'll move on. Guys, I think this next matchup has a ton of interesting aspects to it. The Bills and the Giants. And you're probably like, what the hell are you talking about, Chappy? These 2 teams stink. We're talking about fantasy. Okay? The Bills are 2.5-point dogs. It's a 42.5 over-under. I got to pause. I like the Seahawks getting 4.5 points. But I think the Steelers win the game. Okay? 46.5, I think it goes over. back to the Bills and the Giants. I love the Bills offense. I love the Giants. This sounds crazy because they both stunk last year. But if you look at what's going on with those two teams, they're both trending in the right direction, okay? What I mean by that, from a fantasy perspective, Josh Allen's a good quarterback. And he's a good quarterback because he's always got the run option. But I don't think he's going to use it as much this year because of what Buffalo has brought in. Buffalo's trio of receivers now, and the running back for that, matter of fact, all speak to what Josh Allen does well. John Brown, to Tony's point earlier, is a burner. They call him smoke. Josh Allen loves to throw the deep ball. He's great. John Brown, people don't realize he was mediocre in Arizona because he was fighting sickle cell anemia. Okay? He's recovered from that. He's in remission from that now. So he's totally healthy. And he's got an offense that is going to be hard to double team that deep threat. Cole Beasley is the guy that no one's talking about. You guys saw what Crowder did last week. Cole Beasley has the potential to do that every stinking week. Josh Brown's going to have weeks where he takes off, but there's also going to be weeks where Beasley has big weeks. He's an integral part of that offense. And then Zay Jones is kind of that third receiver that can run that middle route, right? They've got a really good thing going there. And you talk about Devin Singletary to go along with Frank Gore. Buffalo's sneaky good, guys. What do I like about the Giants? A lot, believe it or not. Yes, Sterling Shepard is dinged up. It's unfortunate. But it might not be. Who is it? Andrew, did you ask me about Sterling Shepard? I'm telling you right now to consider going out and taking a look at Cody Latimer. Cody Latimer is a 6'2", 4'4" speedster who's going to be stepping in for Sterling Shepard this week and might not give that job back. Okay? You look at his potential in that offense, it's pretty significant. I look for that offense, and even if Shepard is healthy, Latimer remains viable in that offense. Evan Ingram is the go-to guy in that. He is the focal point of that offense outside of Saquon. Saquon Barkley and Evan Ingram are New York's offense, and that's a good thing. Ingram is going to have a humongous year. He might be the best tight end this year. Those are big words. But I'm okay saying them. He's going to be such a big part of that offense. Daniel Jones is a good quarterback. He is burning a fire under Eli Manning's ass like you don't know. You're going to get Eli's best version this year. It might still stink, but Daniel Jones is a good quarterback. So if it stinks, Daniel Jones is going to play. Therefore, Ingram's viable, Latimer's viable, Shepard's viable. Okay? And obviously Saquon's viable. So you look at those two teams, and you start to break it down. 42.5 seems low to me. I know Buffalo's defense is good. 55% of the air yards last week went to Cody Latimer. Sorry, I'm catching up on my notes. 55% of the air yards last week went to Cody Latimer. You want to talk about DFS gold? There's your man. Okay? If you take nothing away from this hour 20, actually it's going to be an hour 10 because I got to set my damn lineups. Know that Cody Latimer is a steal this weekend in DFS. Let's move on. I've got about 15 minutes. Let's talk about the Cowboys, the Redskins. I find this game interesting. Dallas looks legitimate, guys. And I really do feel... The thing about it is, 7's a lot of points for a division game. These teams are really familiar with each other. Washington knows how to scheme Dallas. Dallas knows how to scheme Washington. Washington is going to shorten the game with Adrian Peterson. Look for big plays out of Terry McLaurin and try and incorporate Vernon Davis in the middle game. Dallas, on the other hand, is going to feed Zeke the ball as much as he can handle. Gallup on the outside, going along with Amari Cooper, really make Dallas a balanced offense, which they weren't last year. I think Dallas wins this game. I don't think they cover. But I think it's close. Okay? I think Washington's going to be better than people think. I look forward to seeing... Vernon Davis is one of those guys that's sneaky. He might be someone to put on your radar. If you got an empty roster spot, pick him up on Sunday morning. Just in case. Because he's super talented. And if Fareed is out for an extended period of time, he could be big. Again, let's talk about... Okay, I hate to save the best for last. I'm pretty sure this is going to be the last game I talk about. But this game is really important. The Arizona Cardinals and the Baltimore Ravens. If you guys are betting, folks, I can give you a surefire lock in this game. 41.5 points is the over-under. I'll say that again. Arizona Cardinals, Baltimore Ravens. 41.5 points. Guys, I would bet my right nut 41.5 over. Arizona is going to score points. Kyler Murray is legitimate. Baltimore's going to score points. Baltimore's defense isn't as good as it was last year. And it wasn't that great last year. You could score on Baltimore. Arizona is going to run more plays. Kyler Murray is going to run more plays. He's going to find the open receiver. David Johnson is going to be viable. I think the Ravens win. A little extreme money. I didn't say both. 14 points is too much in this game. But I'm not going there, Lenny. I'm going to the 41.5, and I'm telling you it's money over. Over in this game. Let me say this. Lamar Jackson is fucking legitimate. Okay? Lamar Jackson is every bit as good as what we saw last week. You can dress that Miami Dolphins stink up all you want. And they do. This is a dude that when he took over the offense last year, they averaged like 7 yards a carry. They don't have to throw the ball. He's that good. But they can. Guys, the Ravens might be the biggest challenger of the Patriots in the AFC. They might be the second best team in the NFL. But I want to talk about the Cardinals. And I want to talk about Cliff Kingsbury. I want to talk about his offensive mindset. Because I think it's important to understand when we're talking about Kyler Murray, yes, it's not all going to be roses. Yes, there's going to be growing pains. But look at what you had in the fourth quarter last week. What happened in the fourth quarter last week was when it got into read and react, Murray was dominant. Not good, dominant. Right? So He's going to be in that situation a lot. Yes, he's going to make mistakes. There's going to be games where he throws a couple interceptions. There's also going to be games where he takes a score 80 yards to the house. Okay? I love the Cardinals offense this year. I love David Johnson. I love old man Larry Fitzgerald. I love Christian Kirk. Here's a sleeper, okay? Michael Crabtree. He's their fourth wide receiver right now. People look at that as taboo. You don't touch that guy. Here's the thing. Kingsbury runs 4 wide receiver sets on the regular. It's not a big deal. It's just like a third wide receiver on another team. Crabtree's going to see plenty of the field. I love this game. This is my game of the week. Okay? Baltimore's my team of the year. This is everybody's going to go apeshit crazy over Mark Ingram this week. Here's the name for you guys. DFS. Justice Hill. If you're trying to build a lineup, Justice Hill's a stud. He's a rookie. He's from Oklahoma State. He's a hard runner. You're going to see him in some goal line situations. It's not going to be all Mark Ingram. Justice Hill is a legitimate running back, and you're going to see a lot of them this year. Starting as soon as this week. If you're building a DFS lineup and you need a cheap running back, look at Justice Hill. Okay? I love this shit, guys. I hope y'all are enjoying this. Let's keep going. How about David Johnson? Real quick before I move on. David Johnson's going to get fed the ball. 100% of the snaps he was in on last week? Something like that? Sorry, I don't have it in front of me. 100% or 84, I can't remember. There's two running backs at 100%. Maybe Johnson at 84. A lot of the portion of the offensive snaps David Johnson was in on. He's going to catch a lot of balls. He's a sleeper guy, okay? How about, let's move on. And again, we're short on time because I want to have a second drink. I'm going to watch this Thursday night game. I'm going to cheer for Chris Godwin to have about 6 touchdowns. Let's talk about... Oh, we're winging it now, guys, but I can do this. Let's talk about the Eagles and the Falcons. Let's move on. I'm going to go to the Sunday night game. I'm cherry picking at this point. I didn't go through any of the 4 o'clock games. I apologize. I'm working on my timing. I'll do better next week. But you know what? Screw it. I want to talk about the Eagles, and I want to talk about the Falcons. It's a pick'em game. 51 point over-under. I like the Falcons to rebound this week. I think it was Sin Cotter. Maybe it was Andrea. Which, first off, let me just say, it's kind of ironic. Sin Cotter's listening to me. Love you, Tony. I listened to you for years when you were on Sirius. So, I'm going to go up to about 5 minutes before game time because I got to set my lineups, Andrea. I think everybody thinks set, but I'm OCD. I'll be pissed off if I don't get them set. But back on point. I love what the Falcons did offensively this offseason. I think I said this last week. I'll say it again this week. I really do believe the quicker Cutter understands that Calvin Ridley is the cog that makes that offense go, the better off they'll be. Julio Jones is great. He's their clear physical threat. But Ridley just has a knack for the end zone. It's really hard because they try and keep Sanu involved. I like Free. The whole 2 first-round offensive line picks thing, it scratches me where I'm itching, right? Add in the fact that offense is just super talented. I'm not even talking about Cooper. I'm not even or Hooper. I'm not even talking about, Ito Smith's great. I think Tony mentioned it. Ito Smith, basically made Tevin Coleman expandable, right? And Tevin Coleman was a good player. Ito Smith's a serviceable back. I just think Devonta Freeman has a special kind of talent. He's versatile. He could do things in different ways. He's just been injury prone. Okay? The Eagles. So, stop. Love Calvin Ridley. Love Julio Jones. Love Devonta Freeman. Okay? I think any three of those guys, if you're playing a DFS match, you can start your team with any of those guys. The Eagles are interesting because, well, it's really the Zach Ertz show, right? And the whole offense kind of revolves around what Ertz does. But what they've done is they've built some really good players around Ertz. Whether it be a Jordan Howard or whether it be a Darren Sproles or a Alshon Jeffrey on the outside. I think that all that other stuff complements the relationship between Ertz and Wentz. The thing for the Eagles is they have to get the run game established in order to be effective. I think the Falcons rebound here. And I think that they do so kind of handedly. I want to do one more game. Maybe two. Requests? And you guys got questions. This is meant to be interactive. What do you guys think? What questions do you have? How about Kansas City and Oakland? Man, this is a cluster truck, isn't it? Patrick Mahomes is his own class at the quarterback position. I think he handles the loss of Tyreek Hill about as well as you can expect. I look for Kelsey to have a big game. I look for Watkins to have another big game. I look for Hardman to have a big... Hardman is the guy that... Hardman is the guy that stands to benefit the most. Andrea, no offense, you're wrong. I totally disagree with that statement. Patrick Mahomes, I saw this guy in person at the end of the half in Morgantown, West Virginia, flick a ball. Not throw a ball, flick a ball 70 yards for a touchdown. This guy is a legitimate talent. He is, pun intended, Brett Favre on steroids. Now, that said, you have to have other pieces to the puzzle. I look for good things out of Hardman. I look for good things out of Watkins. I hope he can stay healthy. But the running game is the important part. Damian Williams. I hate LaShawn McCoy. But he's going to be a big part of that offense. Okay? On the Oakland side of the ball, I think the fact that Kansas City's defense is very mediocre speaks well to what Oakland wants to do. Darren Waller is a guy who is a fantasy target, both in DFS as well as season long. If you're in a shallow league and Darren Waller's available, he should be right up there with TJ Hawkinson as a guy you're targeting. Okay? He's probably gone in most leagues now, though. Tyrell Williams, I think, is someone in Oakland that makes sense. He's a capable wide receiver. He's shown to be in the past. I don't know why he wouldn't. I like Lamar Jackson as well. I mean, you heard what I said about him. So, okay, 8:09. I'm going to give you guys one more games. You want to do the Bears and Broncos? You want to do the Saints and the Rams? Also, any questions? Waller, you should. I mean, it depends on who your other tight end is. Who's your other tight end, Andrea? No votes. Let's do the Bears. I here in Indianapolis, there's a lot of Bears fans. I, again, saw firsthand David Montgomery last year and how good he can be. I drafted him very highly in almost every league. I'm shitting bricks, guys. I'm a little concerned after last week's output. I think the talent's there. I think he's still going to pan out. But it's a little concerning. It's a little concerning how many people they used in Chicago. Hopefully, as the year goes on, because I think Montgomery is one of those guys that needs more touches to be more effective. I hope they'll just be precautious with him, is my point. Allen Robinson looks like the guy that he was early on in Jacksonville. He is someone that if you want to trade, if you need a wide receiver, I think that he is a viable target early on in the fantasy season. He's going to be the wide receiver 1 in Chicago. As far as what else is around him, I don't know. I mean, I know they like Trey Burton. He's kind of having some issues with health. Anthony Miller last year was serviceable, caught a lot of, I think, like 8 touchdowns. Inconsistent, though, right? It's touchdown or bust with him. And Taylor Gabriel, I think, is one of those guys that I'm just not sure about. The one guy I want to point you guys towards, and this is a way away yet, right? It's certainly not this week. Let's talk about Calvin Ridley's little brother. Riley Ridley is a rookie for the Bears. Calvin Ridley said, who everybody on here knows how I feel about Calvin Ridley. He's one of my sleeper players of the year this year. I think he has great potential to get to the 10 receiving touchdowns, 100 receptions, 1,000 yards plateau, which only 4 receivers got to last year. Only 3 receivers got to, and 1 tight end got to last year. Calvin Ridley said that he feels like Riley Ridley, his little brother, is more polished coming out of college than he was. Calvin Ridley's in his 2nd year. Riley Ridley's a rookie. What does that tell you? PPR, George? Lindsey versus Crowder? Riley Ridley's legitimate. He just needs the opportunity. Keep your eye on that guy. If one of these guys gets injured for the Bears and he earns playing time, Riley Ridley's someone to target. Okay? I'm having fun doing this. Let's talk about one more game. This is great, isn't it? Let's talk about New Orleans and the Rams. This is going to be tough for me, guys, because I don't have much on either of these teams. So I'm kind of winging it. That's the great thing about early on in the year, right? You don't have any data, so you can kind of just bullshit about it. You can kind of just give the warm fuzzies. I love the Saints. The Rams are 2.5-point dogs. This is a 53.5-point over-under. That seems like a lot of points to me, guys. I know there's 2 prolific offenses. It's also 2 pretty good defenses. I like the under here. What do y'all think? 53.5, Saints and Rams? Here's the other thing. I love Christian Kirk this week, man. I love Christian Kirk this week. I like Hollywood Brown too, but I think this might be more of a Willie Snead week this week, George. I mean, Brown might still score. I think Kirk has a chance to have a really big week. I'm not a Drake fan, so he's off. The Saints last year were very much a Michael Thomas and other team, right? Passing wise. Obviously, they had Ingram and they had Kamara, duh. This year, it's going to be a little different. I think Traquan Smith caught a touchdown last week. Of course, Ted Ginn's still there. You've got Jared Cook, who's going to be a big part of their offense. Take out Mark Ingram, sub in Latavius Murray. The thing about the Saints, when they're at home, I feel this way about a lot of quarterbacks. When they're at home, you got to give them a favor. When the Rams are at home, you got to give them a favor. Both of these quarterbacks are in the same boat. Listen, don't let that distract you though, George. Game time decision. If Brown plays and you need him, you play him. Banged up, I don't care about with him. He's going to be banged up all. You're going to be fighting that all year, George. Okay? He has the potential to score 2 touchdowns every time he steps on the field. He loves to run that post pattern, and that's what Jackson does well. That's what all these people, listen, we want to talk about bad advice. You're getting a shit ton of bad advice this week with everybody saying that Brown only played 12 snaps, yada, yada, yada. Don't give a fuck. Okay? Pardon my language. Hollywood Brown runs the post as well as anybody in the NFL. Lamar Jackson throws the post route as well as anybody in the NFL. That is his most polished pass. He extends the play with his legs. Brown is going to be open time and time again. Guys, if you take nothing, this is going to be my point, my last point. If you take nothing away from this last hour 20, Hollywood Brown is someone you need to target both in yearly and in daily, because what Jackson does well speaks exactly to what Brown does well. It's a genius move by the Ravens organization. It really is. And in all honesty, when you look at what Kyler Murray does well, it's the same thing, okay? But fact of the matter is, there's no Hollywood Brown. There's no Hollywood Brown in Arizona yet. So Kirk and Fitzgerald are going to have to cut the mustard until they get that person. They both will. Okay? I love this shit. I could talk for the next hour, but I got to go set these. Hey, Thursday nights, talk football with me. I'm going to do this all year. Next week, I'm going to be a little bit more refined. We're going to talk more about stats because we'll have more data to pull from. I love you guys. Thank you all for supporting. Thursday nights, Chaps Fantasy Chat. Tuesday nights, let's talk about some baseball. Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network. Love all you guys. Thanks for everything. Good night.